Now, when she talks about feminist epistemology, Susan Hack takes something like what we were calling in the last video the common view. Uh, and her view, as you saw, is that feminism is irrelevant to epistemology, because epistemology, according to Hack, is the study of knowledge, and feminism is about things like something like the just and equal treatment of women. So she thinks that feminism is a political position. So it's strange, according to her way of thinking, and she has this kind of humorous analogy. It's strange to talk about feminist epistemology in the same way it's strange to talk about Republican epistemology or socialist epistemology. Those things don't seem to make sense for her, and she thinks feminist epistemology is just like that. Political positions don't seem relevant to concerns in epistemology, like the ones we've talked about. It doesn't seem like a political position seems relevant to something like skepticism about the external world, or the Gettier problem, or whether justification is internalist or externalist, any of the topics we've discussed. And so she has this very traditional picture of how epistemology works. And she even takes some, maybe what you might call a very particular position, that what you should believe should be determined, what you believe should be determined only by your evidence, not any other considerations. And so this is taking on, I think, a particular view of justification, one that looks a lot like the view we called evidentialism when we studied Connie and Feldman. But I want to just point out, one doesn't need to be an evidentialist in order to have her sort of more traditional view about epistemology and how it fits with feminism. For instance, it's not obvious that, all forms of externalism fit better or worse with feminism. I think it's not clear that, say, reliabilism is any more or less conducive to fitting with feminism than her internalist or evidentialist view is. And I think she would probably accept this too, given that she thinks things like internalism and externalism are positions in epistemology that are not influenced by politics. This is her view. Now, she does accept that there's plenty of sexism going on in the practices of science, in the practices of philosophy and epistemology. But she doesn't think that this sexism leads to any interesting theoretical conclusions. The fact that there's sexism, she thinks, shouldn't make us give up the traditional view of epistemology, or in her view, what science is doing in general. Now, she, of course, admits, maybe not of course, but she does admit that women are more likely, she thinks, to notice sexism than men are. She admits that that's probably true. And she admits that sexism, as we've seen in history, play out in social sciences, biology, philosophy. This shows that political considerations do sometimes show up in science and philosophy. So sexism playing out in these fields shows that political considerations, like maybe some scientists thinking that men are smarter than women or something like this, those political views or social or ethical views might have something to do with how science has progressed or how philosophy has progressed. But she thinks this is bad. It's bad. This kind of sexism is bad. And these errors caused by sexism in science or in epistemology show that we should keep political viewpoints out of science, out of epistemology. Her view is that sexism was the problem, and we should get rid of these ideas about how men and women relate, or how different genders, different properties different genders have, or different ways of thinking different genders have. We should keep these things out of our epistemological theorizing, because thinking in these terms, she thinks, is what led to the problems, is what led to any sexist problems in philosophy or in science.